This represents the California Duck Curve. Let's talk about what it is, what it means, and why is everybody talking about it? Welcome back, everybody. This is Kevin Kunkel on the Step Next Training Channel, and this is a map of the United States. Over here is California. If it was a country, it would be the 5th largest GOP in the world. So it's a very important state within the United States. It's also where all the celebrities would live. But besides that, today what we're going to talk about is how they get electricity and what is a duck curve. So this is the power demand for California. If you go to caiso.com, you'll find all the information associated with what is their running daily demand of energy. You also will find out what their supply is, and we'll get to that a little later. So each one of these studs represents a different hour of the day and how much energy demand is needed each hour. So what that means is this is midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and it steps up all the way up to 7 a.m. where people are turning on their electricity in the morning, and the businesses are starting to turn on their lights as well. Then it kind of levels out here during the day. Then there's a peak demand when everybody goes home. So around 7 o'clock p.m., you have a lot of power demand. Then it dwindles off as people go to sleep. And then the cycle begins on the next day, all over again. And then the next day, all over again. Each day normally follows this exact curve, which is a good thing. As a power supplier to residential people, you want to know how much demand is going to be needed each day and each hour for you to be able to turn on enough electricity to power those homes. Each one of these bricks represents 2 gigawatts of power demand. So you're looking at a peak demand around 28 gigawatts of power needed in order to supply California with enough energy day to day. But at the low points, you can get down to only 20 gigawatts of electricity needed. So this is the power demand, and what you would normally do is overlap the power demand with supply, okay? Until it's almost 100% overlapping. And then each one of these colors represents different power plant types. So down here in California, they have a set of renewables, and I won't go into the details of all the different types of the small renewables that they have, like biomass and geothermal, but they do have that. Then they have hydropower, that's the blue line. So hydro and other renewables make up around 4-ish gigawatts of power. Then you add another 2 gigawatts of nuclear power, that's in gray. Then California does something different, and they actually buy from their neighbors. So again, this is California. They buy from the Northeast, which is a conglomerate up here, and they buy from the Southeast down here. And they pipe energy into California, which is a little different than a lot of places. They want to become independent, but they don't have enough power. So they actually buy power from their neighbors. So that's what represents this big chunk here. It could be up to 10 gigawatts of borrowed/bought energy from their local neighbors. Now, what is that breakdown? So power coming from other regions have different makeups of where they're getting their power from. A lot of the Northwest power is from hydro and coal. So there's a little bit of coal power coming into California through the Northwest area. Then on top of the borrowed electricity is natural gas. So that's represented here in the dark green. So natural gas can be turned on and off to make sure that it walks up and down based on what the power demand is. Now, why is that important? Why can't you just turn on a gas power plant and just leave it on all day and let the supply be up here and the demand go underneath it? Well, the problem is electricity doesn't work like that. Whatever you're putting out has to be utilized, and whatever need you have has to be supplied. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. Now that's what you typically do. What the duck curve is is the introduction of renewables has added another layer. Boom. So if this is wind turbine energy in white and solar energy in yellow, this is now coming on to the grid at the beginning of the day and then ending at the end of the day. All this power add in solar and wind has now been brought onto the grid. So what do you do in order to make room for this power that's coming onto the grid? Well, let's go back. You can't turn off hydro, you can't turn off nuclear, and you can't turn off other renewables. So, how do you make room for all this new renewable energy? Well, you have to turn off the gas turbines, and you have to eliminate some of the base load of those gas turbines as well. So now you can take that solar energy and put it into the grid and level it out to meet the power demand that is the red zone. Again, the power demand is in red. The normal power supply is in the greens and the blues, and the new renewable energy being added is in yellow and white. With those two added together, they'll make up the demand in red. So what is a duck curve? Well, this new curve with the renewables taken out, and this is the new power demand outside of renewables, sort of looks like a duck. I don't know if I see it or not, but that's what people say, is that this looks like a duck. So this is called the duck curve. So why would I care about a duck curve? And why would I care whether or not my power is coming from solar energy, wind energy, or gas turbines? The reason why you would care is if you live in California, you want to make sure that your house gets electricity day after day. So the problem with reliability comes when the plan breaks down. So if the plan of action of the day is that we're going to get all this solar panel energy and that we're going to turn off the gas turbines all the way down to here and then turn them back on here, that's great. The gas turbine power plant owners will say, great, I will turn on and off, and because I'm turning on and off and it costs me money, I will push that cost to the grid and to the user. The reason why you would want to care about reliability is that if this is the plan of action, and then all of a sudden a cloud comes out, and you don't get the electricity that you thought you were going to get from the solar panels, it just doesn't come in. So because of the lack of solar panels that day, because it's a cloudy day or whatever, now you have to scramble. You have to call up the gas turbine power plants and say, hey, I know that wasn't the original plan, but I need you to supply more energy. They will obviously say, sure, but it's going to cost you even more because it's not what the original plan was. An alternative to this is if the wind turbines start going crazy and they get a lot more energy throughout the night. So all of a sudden, they have a whole bunch of energy coming through during the nighttime. So now you got to turn off power plants up here to be able to support the wind turbines. Again, every time that you separate from the initial plan, it's going to cost the users more money. And the fact that wind turbines and solar panels are volatile and not knowing how much energy you're actually going to produce day after day, it creates havoc as to what power plants as a whole you have to make sure are on the grid in order to meet the demand. So what about batteries? I thought batteries from Elon Musk was going to store up all this great energy and then supply it throughout the day. Well, the answer is yes. The more batteries we have in this grid, the better this can be smoothed out, and the power that we get from solar during the middle of the day could then be utilized during the peak demand day after day. And that's already starting to happen. The only issue is it's not supplying enough energy. Right now it's about 0.1 or 0.09% of the energy demand at the peak day. There's just not enough batteries to make an impact to this 8 to 10 to 12 gigawatt of power supply that is coming from solar and wind each day. So why are we talking about duck curves now, today, versus previous years? So this solar panel energy has gone bananas in California over the last couple of years. A matter of fact, where we thought we were going to be in 2020 with this duck curve is where we're at in 2017. We're 3 years ahead of the game as to how much solar panel energy we thought we were going to add to the California grid in 2020. So this solar panel energy duck curve is going to get bigger and bigger each year. Now, long term, where does that get you? The more and more solar power that we add to the California grid, all it does is it drops this duck curve deeper and deeper until it gets down into items that you do not want to be turning off day to day, like nuclear and hydro and other renewable energy. A matter of fact, if you look at some of the UK wind energy curves, some wind turbine owners have to pay to push their power to the grid because they have to turn off power plants like nuclear and then turn them back on in order to meet the power demand that's going to be later in the afternoon. So if I'm not from California, but I'm from Texas, why do I care about California and their duck curve? Well, let's take a look at Texas. Texas doesn't necessarily have a lot of solar panel energy. They're looking into it and they might add more later. But right now they have a lot of wind energy. And that adds a lot of uncertainty as to what units have to be turning on and off. Their demand is very similar. Their duck curve is going to look completely different, but because it's wind, it actually looks different day to day. Wind energy is very volatile, so whatever they supply, and you got to react and turn off gas turbines in order to meet the demand curve correctly. So in Texas, it's less of a problem or less of a worry because the quantity of power is not there yet. But more and more wind turbines they put into the Texas grid is going to create more and more volatility within the power supply to meet the demand. So this is starting in California, but it's making its way across the rest of the United States into all the different zones. And again, it might not be a duck like California, but it might be something else. Maybe Texas goes with the longhorns or some other animal that they think that the new demand curve looks like. But eventually, all the power suppliers are going to have a lot more renewables. And because of that, everybody needs to then know what their demand and supply curve looks like to know how much of the renewable energy they can take into their grid without having created problems for the other power plants. So what do you do next? Well, reach out to us at Step Next Training, and we can actually offer a more in-depth training course around how does this work, how is the long-term picture going to be created around your particular grid, and we can talk to you about how this is going to impact the future and how to plan for the future. So reach out to us at www.stepnexttraining.com. We would love to be able to understand what your concerns are with the duck curve and how we can actually help you or your company. So if you like this video, if you learned something today, please leave a thumbs up down below. I really appreciate it. And if you have any comments around this duck curve, leave a comment down below. I'd love to have a chat about this. And if there's anything we can do to help in this subject matter, let us know at stepnexttraining.com. Thanks everybody. Bye-bye. This is a map of the United States, and this, what?